Hello, thank you very much for watching. This video is going to be looking back at the weekend. Now we've got a bit of distance and been able to calm down and take stock of round 4 of the Six Nations. And I'm delighted that I'll be doing this with, well, he's a friend and colleague and a fellow rugby YouTuber who you should definitely check out, Alfie Reynolds.
Tim, how are you? Good to speak to you. I'm good, thank you. It's the fallout for England continues. Ireland march on to Dublin, St. Patrick's Day with a wounded England in their sights. A lot to get into. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, and you can find Alfie is at Alfred Reynolds on YouTube, and Alfie and I work together on many a rugby game for TalkSport, and that's where you'll quite often hear Alfie as well on working on sport. But his YouTube channel definitely worth checking out if you're a rugby fan. So do that. And yeah, let's get stuck in straight away to England, Alfie. I've already given plenty of my hot takes on videos here. What are your overriding feelings now you've had a bit of distance from Saturday and that massacre?
It is a weird one, isn't it? I think there's a reason that there's so much talk around it. The fact that it's England's heaviest defeat at Twickenham. I guess my overall thought was there was a lot of chat last week, wasn't there, about Owen Farrell and Marcus Smith. Huge call from Borthwick to select Marcus Smith. And I said on my channel, my concern with him picking Smith was ultimately that I didn't think England would play in a style to get the best out of Smith. I thought he would fit into that England system and they would continue to play the same way that they had done throughout the Six Nations so far, which is very tactical, play the tactical kicking game, try and pin the opposition back and get the ball higher up the pitch. I didn't think England actually did that. I thought what England did was try and play a more expansive game. They did try and shift it more. They played loads of quick lineouts quite early on. And actually that in a way was their downfall because it was a system that they just couldn't execute at all. And it wasn't a system that those players have been used to playing recently at all under the end of Eddie Jones or the start of the Steve Borthwick era. And it backfired horribly. So that was kind of my reason. I felt like the reason it went so badly for England was actually because they went away from the system they had been trying to play, even though everyone wanted them to start playing more attacking.
Yeah, and weirdly, they tried to play faster, but the players look slower than I've ever seen them. The forwards looked like they were running around in treacle in minute 1. It was weird.
What, just out of interest, because you were there, so what was it like being there? Because I was at the Scotland game with you and at the Italy game, and both occasions I came away actually I felt feeling more positive than most people seem to, because I think you get a different perspective when you watch it in the stadium compared with watching it on TV. But was it as bad as we probably expect even watching it in stadium?
Yeah, it was. And very quickly by half time I was just like, do you know what, I'm just going to enjoy this amazing French team because they are incredible. But yeah, it was what's just odd is we know some of these players are brilliant players. They've won European Cups. They've got to World Cup finals. They won Premiership titles. They just look shadows of themselves. And I don't know whether that's the Premiership isn't. There's that phrase, steel sharpens steel. And, you know, when you're playing great teams every week, like the players are in the top 14, you know, it gets you ready for international rugby. I don't know if that's what's going on or if it is, or if this is just more Eddie Jones hangover. I don't know. That's the biggest takeaway is I don't think the players know. Like, why am I suddenly bang average? Weird.
I think there's so many things that you could look at with this, can't you? Of whether you want to look at the domestic game in England and the Premiership and 2 clubs going bust and an exodus of talent potentially of English players finally moving overseas because the Premiership clubs can't pay them. I think there's a discussion to be had about the quality of the Premiership as well, which I think you agree on. I think the Premiership is a great competition in that it's really, really competitive. But what people often do is confuse competitiveness with quality. Just because there's about 6 teams that could get the final spots to be in the playoffs, it doesn't actually mean they're good. It means we've got basically 6 average teams going for the spots in the playoffs. So I think there's loads of other stuff. The pathway, the England under-20s aren't as good as they used to be when they used to be always getting to Junior World Cup finals. So yeah, I think there are deeper issues here really than just one thing. It's not just, I know you said this, it's not just about the fly half selection, for example. There's a whole load of things going on here in English rugby. For the time being, I think there's going to be hopefully a bit of short-term pain for longer-term gain if they can figure it out.
Well, let's think of the short-term pain. How do we mitigate it and not get an absolute beat down in Dublin? What changes do you make? Let's rattle through the team. Front row, does it stay the same?
I think it has to, doesn't it? And this is the worrying thing for England, is I just don't think there's the strength and depth there. I mean, it has to, Genge and Sinclair, they're two best props. Jamie George, well, it's him or Luke Cowan-Dickie, but Luke Cowan-Dickie's injured and going to France. So I've got the same front row. What about you?
I've got the same front five, although Maro Itoje is just not cutting the mustard. He had moments at the weekend, but yeah, I've kept the same front five. Would you change any of the locks?
So I would have dropped Itoje, but I know just this evening as we're recording this, I saw England kind of their trimmed down squad, and Ollie Chesham has picked up an ankle injury to rule him out. So I would have had Chesham there. I would have put Itoje on the bench because I agree. I think he hasn't been anywhere near as good as he once was. I know he had this underlying health issue, which he said has kind of been resolved, but I don't know how much of an impact that's had on his performances. So originally I had Chesham and Johnny Hill. But yeah, now that Chesham's not available, I think maybe Itoje comes back in with Johnny Hill, and I'd probably have to think about my second row replacement on the bench.
Yeah, and then let's try and be quick on this because we could be here all night just chatting about the England back row. But Alex Dombrandt, the way I see it is he was poor. He looked really average compared to those French back row. But I don't know what else you do. Ludlam to 8 and give a different flanker a go.
Yeah, Ludlam to 8 is what I've gone for, and then Ben Curry 6, Jack Willis 7 with Ben Earl on the bench. But I agree, Dombrandt, I thought he actually did all right against Wales, but he struggled, didn't he, against France?
Alex Mitchell at scrum half, or do you punish JVP for not his greatest day, but he was behind that pack?
Yeah, Mitchell at 9 for me. Looked a lot sharper when he came on. JVP, one for the future. He's had a bit of a tough run now, hasn't he? So I think it's time maybe for Mitchell to get the start.
We're partnering who? One name, just say a name.
Owen Farrell.
Yes.
Owen Farrell.
I think the same. I think the same. And centres, then we don't have Ollie Lawrence, so is it automatically then just we back to Manu again?
We're back to Manu. I've got Manu at 13, though. I've actually gone, the luxury of us is we can pick a team even if we think there's no chance that Borthwick will pick it. I've gone for Guy Porter at 12 and Manu at 13. But I think we need Manu for Ireland. We need that physicality in the centres.
Is Guy Porter on the radar for this?
Good question. He was in the wider squad. He may well have been released back to Leicester. Okay. Let me double check it. That's what I had earlier.
Yeah. No, that's a good shout.
Yeah, that's what I had in my team earlier.
That's a good shout. And then back three, it'd be interesting to see what back three players he's still got there.
Yeah, Porter's not there, by the way, so I probably would have to make a change there. 12. So probably Manu 12, and I'd be tempted with Joe Marchant at 13. What's your view on Henry Slade, Tim?
Love him. Hasn't been great. So I'm quite happy. Come on, it's a World Cup year, and we've just had a record home defeat. Just let's see what some of these guys have got. So get Joe Marchant in, get Ollie Hassel-Collins back in. Is he in the trimmed down squad?
Yeah, Hassel-Collins is back in there. Henry Arundel as well. I've put him on one wing, and Max Malin's on the other with Freddie Stewart at fullback. I
might try not playing Freddie Stewart and play Arundel or Malins at fullback. The one thing I think with Farrell and Stewart, you lack a bit of gas in the back line, so maybe just go all gas. I'm just kind of like, what the heck? Roll the dice, go for it, because we're going to get pumped. So I'll tell you what. Yeah, go on, Alfie. Just round us off with England then.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's a funny one, isn't it? Because I see loads of people saying, oh, it's a free hit for England. But actually, I don't know if you would agree with this. I don't think it is a free hit, because if they get absolutely pumped again, then there's some pretty awkward questions having to be asked there. I think there is something on this game for England, not in so much as people expect them to win. I don't think they've got a chance of winning. I'd be amazed if they were able to beat Ireland in Dublin. But I think there is pressure on them to improve. And for a squad that's had that sort of defeat, and I think are probably pretty low in confidence, I think there's something on it for England. I don't know if you agree or not, or whether you would think that maybe it is a free hit.
It's a test match in the Six Nations. It matters massively. And that's what Steve Borthwick said when he arrived. And I think for that reason, he won't make nearly as many changes as we're suggesting. But I think there will be a few. As for their opponents, let's jump onto Ireland then, who, I mean, they can just cope with anything. No hookers, Players dropping like flies, whatever. We'll deal with it. It speaks to how together that group is, and just it makes me every time I think about it and I look at that team, I think, oh, we let Andy Farrell go. England fired Andy Farrell, or we released him. We didn't renew his contract.
It's
Same with
amazing.
Sean Edwards. Oh.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, Ireland are just the real deal, I think, in terms of how they attack, the structure of their attack, and how dangerous they look consistently. I remember watching the first test of their tour of New Zealand in the summer, which was the match they actually ended up losing really heavily. But I remember watching the first sort of 15, 20 minutes of that game and thinking, Ireland are really good here. And eventually New Zealand got themselves on top with a couple of quick scores. The game kind of got away from Ireland, but I still came away from that game, even though they lost, thinking this Ireland side are seriously, seriously good. And since then they've kicked on and kind of proven that. I love the way they attack. And then kind of what you were referencing there, Tim. I mean, how many other international teams could lose both of their hookers, have a replacement prop come in and be the hooker in the scrum, have their back rower, who's also the World Player of the Year, throwing in at the line out? Just, they seem to be able to cope with anything at the moment. And as I've said already, I said before the Six Nations that Ireland absolutely waltzed to a Grand Slam. And I think that's going to absolutely be the case. I think Dublin is going to be a really good place to be an Irishman this weekend.
Oh, and that fact that Johnny Sexton's more than likely going to break the all-time Six Nations points record to win a Triple Crown, Grand Slam, Six Nations Championship in Dublin on St. Patrick's Day weekend. It's
and they've never won a Grand Slam at home either.
No, that's what is it? Would this be their third, or have they won three before?
So what is it? They've won.
They've won three in total, or have they won two, and this will be their third? I can't remember, but you're right. Every single time they've won it is that they've never won it in Dublin. So it's going to be pretty special when they claim that Grand Slam. And I as long as the players like Gary Ringrose and Ronan Kelleher, as long as they are all back and fit and well, I see this as a positive thing for Ireland. Again, they get to test the depth. They've got a lot more confidence in Finlay Bealham, knowing that he did the business against France when they didn't have Tadhg Furlong. But now they get to test the depth of the squad, try out different combinations, and they'll be going into the World Cup feeling whatever gets thrown at them, they'll deal with it.
Yeah, and you hear about it, don't you? The depth of talent they have in Ireland in terms of players that play for some of the provinces in the URC that are absolutely unbelievable, and they don't even get selected. Yeah, what was the score? What was it, like 80 points or something?
82. Oh, I can't remember. It was like 82-7, something ridiculous. But the back rows coming through in Ireland under 20s are ridiculous. It was like men against boys watching them. It's just, they've got some freaks. The school system, the province system, the IRFU, the coaching, there's years of work gone into this, but it is just bearing incredible fruit right now.
Yeah, and it's all coming together, isn't it, really? I mean, you speak about the injuries. Obviously, Ian Henderson ruled out. They've already lost Tadhg Byrne, but they're probably going to have players that come in there. Gary Ringrose, they've lost as well. Does that mean Henshaw comes in for him? McCloskey missed the Scotland game because he had a slight injury, but he had been starting in the Six Nations. There's just options there. And kind of referencing back to what we were saying about England and maybe the lack of depth in certain positions, it's the opposite for Ireland at the moment. I guess the challenge for them really is just continuing it into the World Cup. And I don't mean that anything in terms of, Ireland peaking too early for a World Cup. I think we've kind of got over that. But I know a lot of people I've spoken to who covered England in 2003 said that England peaked in winning that Grand Slam in 2003. And then they were kind of holding on to eventually win the World Cup later that year. We'll see if that's the same for Ireland. But at this moment in time, they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. They will dispatch England easily.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately this Super Saturday is not going to be nearly as entertaining as it could have been because of the way the results have gone. We get to see France. They're going to get second place. They'll feel very confident in themselves after that result. That felt like a kind of statement victory. Although they lost against Ireland, they hadn't beaten England since 2005. That in the last World Cup cycle 4 years ago, they got absolutely pumped in this fixture, and they produced a complete performance that was a massive statement. Had Fabien Galtier crying tears of joy, literally tears, on TV, on French TV at the weekend.
Yeah, and there's kind of 2 points on this. You referenced that game, or what was it? England won like 44-8 at Twickenham in the last World Cup cycle, and that was the kind of line in the sand for the French, because after that was when Untermack and Dupont came in for the first time and made their debuts, and they kind of built from there. So there's an interesting parallel really between that result and the last one they had there, and whether England are able to muster something similar. But just another point on that, and you talking about Galtier in tears, and as I said, I was at the Italy game, I was at the Scotland game, I was at the South Africa game and Argentina games in the autumn as well. And I'm making this about England again, but just your thoughts, Tim, on no one's afraid to go to Twickenham anymore, are they? I don't think at this moment in time. Whereas Twickenham traditionally, you just mentioned, if France hadn't beaten England there in the Six Nations since 05 or 07, whenever it was, that's not the case anymore. I think that is, again, something else, which is a massive concern for Steve Borthwick in England.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And that feeling of invincibility is exactly what France will have after that win. And all the players that we were saying, oh, are they not quite at their best? Are they starting to decline a little bit? Cyril Bay, Charles Olivon, Gregory Aldrit, they were just monstrous. And what the maddest thing about that, from France's point of view, is you sort of go, oh, they're a massive pack. They're so physical. They were smaller than England's pack, and they absolutely monstered them.
Yeah, and also the other thing with that as well is, I think, looking at the statistics, it was like, I think in terms of the amount of dominant tackles, England made more dominant tackles. England's scrum and line-out actually functioned fairly well, but at the breakdown, in particularly that French back row, who are brilliant, just absolutely had their way with England, didn't they? Like Aldrit, Olivon, it was a lesson really for that England back row.
Yeah, the another stat I thought was amazing was 53 points. France were in England's 22 for 1 minute and 44 seconds of the entire game.
Yeah, and England were in France's 22 for longer than that.
Yeah.
And again, actually, I think one of the defining, every so often statistics go on trend, don't they? Like in the autumn, it was all about ruck speed. I think the one from this Six Nations has ultimately been red zone efficiency, which isn't necessarily a new thing, but in pretty much every game, the team that's won has been the team that have been able to take their opportunities when they arise. And often they're coming up against sides who had more time in their 22 but weren't able to take those opportunities. And France, it was like 4 point something points per red zone entry at Twickenham. It was ridiculous.
It's crazy. And it, sometimes it was just simple things executed absolutely perfectly. And they're an incredible rugby team. And I mean, again, we keep talking about that half of the draw at the World Cup. Absolutely brutal. And speaking of one of the probable losers in that brutal half of the draw is Scotland, who are going to be without those two fellas, Finn Russell and Stuart Hogg, for this final match. Can Blair Kinghorn play 10 and 15?
I know. Well, the interesting thing with this is Kinghorn was earlier in the Six Nations, at least. I saw quite a few people suggesting that Kinghorn should start at 15 instead of Stuart Hogg. Which is quite interesting. It was a time where you would have never have thought that would be the case. So I guess I'm thinking Tim Kinghorn comes in at 15, and then I messaged a friend of mine who's a Scotland fan, kind of asking what he was thinking at fly half, and he was saying
Ben McKeely. Ben McKeely,
yeah, exactly. Another born and bred Scotsman in the.
I think
he's
like, is his mum Scottish? Like I don't want to go overboard on those. Yeah. It's like the same with Matt Hansen. Yes, fine, he was not born and raised in Ireland, but he's Irish. He's Irish. I'm more cynical about the project players, and but the ones that have got parents, that's just fine. And that's more fool Australia for not spotting the talent of Matt Hansen, or
yeah, totally.
Of who were we just talking about? Ben McKeely.
Ben Healy. Yeah. Ben McKeely. Yeah, exactly.
Get him in.
Man from Ireland.
Well, it's good. He'll be captain.
Yeah, but I think, look, it's a challenge, isn't it? I think for Scotland, that's the thing. They've how will they assess this Six Nations? Because it started so well. Ultimately, they've kind of proven that they're the best of the rest, behind Ireland and France, who are a fair way ahead at the moment. I guess it's a decent Six Nations, but once again, Scotland haven't kicked on. But then you look at the teams that they're trying to catch, and they're absolutely brilliant. They're 1 and 2 in the world.
Yeah, and Gregor Townsend may not get an extension on his contract. I think that would be harsh, frankly, because who would do better than Gregor Townsend has done, depending on obviously how this weekend goes. Let's jump on to Wales then. And they righted some wrongs. Things are far from perfect, but is that not a turning point? I think that would be over egging the pudding a little bit, but was that the start of a journey back upward? They've just hit the bottom and they're bouncing back a little.
Well, potentially. See what happens this weekend. But it was a weird game, wasn't it? Because my takeaway from it was, and I was covering it for radio, was actually that it was a huge missed opportunity for Italy. Because and I felt like Italy looked like a side who weren't comfortable at all with being favourites. And Wales were able to capitalise on that. But actually, if you compare both teams and if you compare the kind of structure of their attack and the phases that they were able to go through in the game, I still think that Italy played the better rugby. And I don't mean that Wales didn't deserve to win, because Wales did. They took their opportunities. They put Italy under pressure. But just in terms of almost who looked more impressive at certain times, I thought it was Italy. So I thought it was a huge missed opportunity for Italy. For Wales, I still don't know what questions they've answered. I mean, Reece Webb came in and played really well. He was man of the match, but he's 34. He's not kind of the long-term future, is he? I still think Gatland has no idea what his best team is. He's not sure which of the older players he needs to rotate out the squad and which of them he needs to keep. I still think, there's still a lot of questions for Wales, but the important thing was to win, wasn't it? They needed something at least, and we'll see if they can build on it. But no, I think they're still a fair way off.
I think the important thing to remember, and this would be Wales and England as well, I'd lump in with this, is they can be average and get to a World Cup semi-final. They've actually got, they've got a lot more leeway than other teams. Like you say, Ireland have got to keep that momentum going and keep at that high standard all the way through the pool stage and the quarter-final. England and Wales can get to a semi-final whilst being not great, because they'll should be able to just about make it through their pool stage, and then they'll probably have each other. And
it's a great irony though, isn't it, for World Rugby, and that the reason they do the draw so ridiculously early is because they're worried about selling tickets. I mean, I don't know how you can be worried about selling tickets for a World Cup in France, but anyway, that's by the by. But it's kind of shot them in the foot, because it does mean we could well have kind of semi-finals where we're looking at it and saying, because you were so worried about not selling tickets and you did the draw so early, we don't have the best semi-finals that we could possibly have. You might not even end up having the best final that you could possibly have. It's kind of just, it's bizarre, but I know that's been a fairly well-trodden argument already.
Yeah, but that should give Wales, some hope that they can build a lot more gradually than other teams. And well, they're going to need to, because there's a lot of stuff to sort out. It's an absolute mess off the field. It's a mess on the field, frankly. But at least there were some green shoots there. As for Italy, it's hard to assess Italy, because like you say, they didn't blow it. That's not the point. But yeah, they did. They missed the best opportunity to get themselves a win. They're more than likely going to end with another wooden spoon. They're not going to get out of their pool in the World Cup. So yeah, we admire the way they play, but there is no results to show for it. In terms of how they play, Alfie, and I don't know whether you agree with this. You said they played the better rugby, and I agree with that. But it reminded me a little bit, if anyone watches the Premiership, early Bristol Bears when they first came up to the Premiership, and they played from absolutely everywhere, and it was amazing to watch. And I know you're a Bristol fan, so you'll remember this well. It was incredible to watch, but ultimately it was quite a naive way to play. And as soon as they rebalanced it more and and picked the moments to be like that and the moments to play percentages, then they started winning and they finished top of the Premiership. And it feels like Italy have got to go through that.
It's a great comparison, actually, Tim. I hadn't thought of it that way, but it's a good one. I think the positive thing for Italy is at least they are able to play this way now. I think there's once upon a time, there's no way that Italy would have even had the skills or the players with the skills to try and run it out from their 22. Like, they are able to play that way, and all right, it backfired a few times, but they've been able to do it and actually trouble some of the better teams. So maybe their game is developing. And I think, how do you look at Italy? I mean, I look at the under-20s, and the Italian under-20s have been steadily improving. So maybe the pathway is there, that they'll start to have a better quality of players. I don't think they're there quite yet, though, because I do still look at that team, and I think you look at, Michele Lamaro or Seb Negri and a number of other players, you think they are really, really good internationals. You look at some of the others and you think they're not getting anywhere near any other international side in the Six Nations, and even, you know, some other international sides, the tier 2 sides, whatever you want to call them as well. So I don't think they quite have the depth of quality in their squad just yet. The positivity is that they're building in the right direction. But yeah, part of the reason I was so disappointed from their defeat to Wales was because I just wanted to see something. I wanted to see that victory over Wales in the Six Nations last year, the victory over Australia in the autumn. I just wanted to see it backed up again, consistent progress. Whereas barring a real miracle this weekend, you'd imagine it's going to be another wooden spoon and another 5 defeats from 5.
Yeah, quite. Well, that kind of wraps up. Well, we don't even need to do predictions for this weekend, Alfie, do we? What's the point in doing predictions? It's bearing in mind this, was it 2017, the most incredible Super Saturday ever, where it was like 5 teams had a chance of winning the tournament, and there was the points difference, and it was changing all the time, and it was absolutely incredible. This is going to be fun, and it'll be good to watch, but it's not going to be the same Super Saturday that we've had in the past. At the end of what has been a brilliant Six Nations.
Yeah, what you said earlier about it not being a great Super Saturday is exactly right. It's when I looked at the fixtures, you thought, well, we're kind of just really hanging on for the Ireland game, and they're probably going to beat England really easily and win the Grand Slam. It's still a great day of rugby when you can sit down and watch 3 internationals back to back. But yeah, I think in terms of as Super Saturdays goes, it's not the best.
Yeah. So we're not even going to bother doing a preview. What we are going to do is have another video coming your way very soon, where we're going to rank this Ireland team in relation to the very great teams of all time. So that's why you should hit subscribe here. Go and hit subscribe on Alfie's channel, Alfred Reynolds, on YouTube, and we'll see you on the next one. Nice one, Alfie.
Nice one, Tim.